You hear this sound? Shh. That's the sound of me pissing on Celeste's grave. Holy shit. One of the most forced AstroTurf video games of all time, 2018 Celeste, a game about overcoming depression or something, has had its sequel unceremoniously canceled. The three guys who were working on the follow-up, Earthblade, have split up, canceled the game, and it's never coming out. You are never ever getting a follow-up to Celeste. Not that Earthblade looked all that interesting anyway, but this is the reality of propping up mediocre, uninspired games from nobody developers. Even if they become successful, even if people meme them into being a big deal, if people gaslight you into thinking that, like, well, Celeste is the greatest platformer ever made. You know, Celeste is like the Astrobot of 2018. It's like the same kind of mentality, like, oh, this game is so deep, it's so challenging. I don't even play platformers, but this is the greatest platformer I've ever played. You know, like, it was the same exact mentality. And a little bit of that still carries over today, you know, for the 5 of you who remember what this game is, or remember anything about it. But yeah, this is really exciting news for me. Like, another one bites the dust. Man, that is glorious to see. And this was a game that got some hype behind it. They showed off a trailer at the Game Awards one year, showing again how ineffectual the Game Awards are at promoting any of the games they show off. You know, I'm sure like there were people looking forward to this, and yet it's never ever gonna come out. And I can tell you, it's not the only one. You know, Power World's never going to get a follow-up. And it's never actually going to leave early access. Power World will never leave early access. Silk Song is never going to come out. Stardew Valley is never going to get a real sequel. It's, you know, like, this is the same old tired song and dance. You know, I saw a while back that, like, a lot of people on Twitter were trying to gaslight users into thinking Terraria has sold more copies than Super Mario Bros., which is retarded considering just how many times that game has been released on so many different platforms that aren't really counted. The Virtual Console alone is probably a huge deal for that game. But yeah, again, I'm very sick and tired of the community acting as if like indie developers, especially ones on PC, are some like major deal, that they're like putting out all this like amazing creative content that AAA devs would never put out. It's just not true. You know, like too many times we've seen shit like this, or Super Meat Boy, or Fez, or that like Braid. You know, like those games were worshipped at the time. You know, so many people tried to say these games were like some stellar masterpieces, and look where they are now. You know, Braid got a re-release recently. They sold it again at full price for like some stupid like 6-hour long documentary on like how deep and complex the game actually is, when it's just, you know, as my boy Soulja Boy tells it, just Mario in a business suit. Like, oh, the princess doesn't want to be saved. Ooh, you're boring. It's not that deep, bro. So, with that being said, what can we expect to see going forward when it comes to these kind of indie devs? I do think the era of like propping up nobody developers is over, because like it's becoming more and more apparent that most of these people are one-hit wonders. You know, the reality is they put out one game that really resonates with people, that makes a ton of money, that sells a lot, that gets prominent. And if they do anything different, you know, their fans get upset and uppity. But if they do put out a direct sequel, what ends up happening is that people get bored of the game anyway for being more of the same. And obviously, like, the only way around this is to put out, like, more and more content to keep people engaged in your ecosystem, and, like, you know, manage to balance both sequels and new content. You know, like, what Harmon Smith is doing with his book series, right? Like you you're never going to make everyone happy. So the only thing you can do is just put out as much content as possible and hopes some of it starts building a following. And I just don't see that for the vast majority of these developers. You know, when you look at like someone like Jonathan Blow, who's been relevant since Braid came out in 2010, he's only ever put out one sequel, The Witness, which was like super polarizing and a lot of people didn't like. Um, and like now his company is in trouble, right? Like, you know, he's based in San Francisco for some reason. And it's just like you have to improve your production pace. Like you have to do something about the way you do business because like your method isn't working, right? Like the idea that like, oh, I'm doing it for the art, like, oh, I want to be innovative, like it doesn't mean anything if you can't pay your bills or even put out a product, you know? And like this Earthblade situation is really interesting because again, we're seeing a similar situation as to what happened with like Disco Elysium, right? When like the rights of the game and like who owns what are in limbo, and as a result of that, that's going to lead to friction and infighting among the team. Like this is the reality of these indie games that are worshipped is that you know, even if a lot of people love them, if a lot of people prop them up, declare it to be their favorite game of all time, the reality is more than likely, the developer will never be able to put out a follow up that lives up to the original. Even if the original is like genuinely good, even if the sequel is genuinely good, like it's not going to be the fresh, new, exciting thing that it once was. And that is the reality of indie dev. You know, you're seeing more and more of these people freak out whenever they have like, whenever their numbers don't hit their supposed metrics. You know, like I'm thinking of someone in particular. Yeah, the Frienza Ringo Ishikawa guy, right? Like he came out and complained about his new game not doing well. Instead of just bearing with it and putting out a new game, like he complained about it to the point where like everyone's kind of laughing at him, you know? Like it's the same deal with Earthblade, right? You know, I have been calling out Celeste for what it was all this time, you know, like a platformer for trannies, basically. To me, like I celebrate this, you know, I celebrate the massive L that these developers have taken. You know, I despise the fan base. I have nothing but contempt for them. You know, these are people who don't have any respect for the platforming genre, who propped up this mediocre game with its stupid story. Like, oh man, like it's like she's overcoming depression, bro. Like bullshit. I am appalled and disgusted by your attempts at making Celeste into some kind of gamer culture icon. And I am very glad to see that it has faded away into obscurity, where it will stay forevermore.